who was the owner of the Metropole hotel chains, and he gave a break to a cabaret singer, a nightclub singer by the name of Rabbi.
We're just going to have to take a break and change tapes. Interview with Rabbi Michael Mandel. This is tape 6. Rabbi, you were telling me about your uncle and auntie meeting up outside the barber shop. What happened?
As I was telling you, there was a cousin of mine, of ours, my mother's cousin and therefore my uncle's cousin as well. He was in charge of the Metropole hotels, and he gave a chance for this Valeria Rabbi, a nightclub singer with a very pleasant voice, and she was a very proper girl. But because she was so grateful to my cousin, at the time when she started to go to the nightclubs, and especially to Metropole Hotel, she said to my cousin, if I ever can do anything for you, don't hesitate to ask me. So from the barber shop, my uncle phoned my cousin, our cousin, his cousin, and he said, well, I need you very badly. Can you suggest a place where I could go? He contacted Rabbi. Rabbi said, obviously, come to my place. And they went over across the Danube, because she lived in Buda.
Could you spell her name, please?
Rac, R-A-C-Z. In Hungarian it's pronounced Rac. Vali is Valeria. Yes, that was her name. Vali, V-A-L-I.
Is Vali or Valeria her first name?
Her first name, yes.
And her surname is Rac?
Rac. Rac, which means Yugoslav or Serb or something like that.
So did your uncle go?
Uncle and aunt went there and went into hiding there, but I did not know about that. She made them not only most welcome, but very safe hiding place. She had under the stairwell, she had a room, and eventually she had it was concealed, and there was a toilet in it, and there was a bathroom, a shower or something like that, and daily the food was given to them. They aged very, very quickly, being confined and always under threat of discovery. What she had to do, she was well known in Budapest, and she had to invite the German officers to her apartment, which was upstairs. And she was singing to them and entertaining them. Little did they know that underneath there are a couple of Jews hiding. And that's how they survived.
You were telling me about how you received the scar on the top of your head.
Yes. Now that happened before, that's during 1944. It happened around about, I suppose, July, something like that, or maybe early August. I had to go to work at the Standortkommandatur, that's the local military commander's place, which was in Hotel Wien in Budapest, and had to work there. Our work there consisted of schlepping up to top floor heavy cases of loot from Russia, written on it in German, the Russian people's gift to the German people. And it was chandeliers and paintings and vases and articles of value, all right, from museums, from I do not know from where. But anyway, it was very heavy cases, 100 and more kilos, 200 kilos, whatever. And we had to schlep it up to the 8th floor. And we worked there. And at that time we were to supply our own food. So I had with me a container with some soup, but it got off, it went off. And the lady in the canteen, there was a soldier's canteen there, and she said, have you got a few cents, a few pennies, whatever it was? I gave a few, fill there. She said, I can give you some, because it must be per voucher or whatever. So she gave me some food. I paid for it, but I didn't dare to say that when I was asked, because she would get into trouble. But I got it. What happened? I went out instead of the foyer of the hotel. I went on the steps and took my food and started to eat. And there came in a Nazi officer. And of course I jumped to my feet and saluted him. That was the... And he could not understand and could not stomach the idea that a Jew is eating there. Where did you get the food? And I said, I got it from here. So I didn't say that I bought it and purchased it because it would bring trouble to the woman who was very kind and nice. He said, before I could say anything, you stole it, you pinched it. I'll deal with you, all right. Next day, I was going back to work, and I was taken up to the 3rd floor, I think it was, interrogated. They took a report on it, a protocol, a Jedzöke.
Who interrogated you?
A Nazi officer.
German?
German, yes. And he asked me, and his secretary was the interpreter. I understood every word he said because I could speak fluent German.
How could you speak fluent German?
Well, in my home, the girls were taught specially, but my father insisted on saying that anyone in Europe, anyone with minimum of education must know at least another language beside Hungarian. And the first alphabet I started to write was the Gothic alphabet. And I spoke fluent German at the time. I understood anyway, but I did not let on. So I let the girl interpret for me, the woman. And she was very nice. She was a nice person. She tried to put it in the way that I get least into trouble. But next day, then he sort of verdraaid him the cop with her feminine looks and gesticulations. And I was let off then, but then the next day I was interrogated further.
What was the line of questioning?
By that time, when they discovered it was Jude Mihai Mandel, that's how it was taken. Mandel, So they came back to me, and what was my residential address before I, so it was Rákóczi, and they discovered that my uncle and I, uncle and nephew, they were related. So where is your uncle? Don't know? Pachimponem. Another Pachimponem. Don't know? You sure know it in a minute. Stepped on my foot and gave me as many beatings as he could muster at that time.
How old were you?
I was 16.
Who was interrogating you?
This Nazi officer. Not the same one, another one.
What nationality was he?
He was German too.
Do you remember what colour his uniform was? Or what branch he was with?
He was with the Gestapo. He was with the Gestapo.
Do you know his name?
Who would dare to ask? Who would dare to ask? God wouldn't dare to ask, so to speak. This sounds blasphemous, but believe me, they were over and above everybody.
You said he stood on your foot
and beat me, and then he took he had a baton, and he knocked me with that one, dug in my sides and beat me on the arm and the head as well.
Is that how you obtained the
Yes,
scar?
but then he said, "Don't worry, you will soon remember." Don't worry. So they bound my hand to the armchair, to the arm of the chair, and stuck nails into my nail, under my nail. He says, "Don't worry, it's sterilized." And I was screaming, blue murder. And then they said, "You still don't remember? You will remember soon, don't worry."
Did you actually know at this point where your uncle was?
Had no clue whatsoever. And just as well, please God. I would have never given him away wittingly, but maybe because of the pain and the torture I might have given him away, but I did not know. I honestly didn't know. I only discovered this in March the following year, when I came over from Buda, from the children's home where I was hiding. And so they boiled some hot water and they syringed into my left ear. It is excruciating. You ask any doctor, what does hot water do in the ear? And they tortured me for quite a while. I passed out, and they poured buckets of water over me and so on, but they started again. And I became deaf, totally deaf on my left ear. I can't hear at all. This is here to transfer it through the wire to my other ear. I can't hear at all with the left ear, not a little bit. And so eventually I was released from that, but it became pussy and suffered quite a bit for quite a while, but I didn't realize it at that time that I lost my hearing. I only thought it was sore, but it was.
Do you have any idea how long they were interrogating you for?
Must have been several hours. It started about mid-morning. It went on for several hours.
Where did the interrogation take place?
In that place, in that Hotel Wien in Budapest, the Standortkommandatur, which was actually, it was a Wehrmacht establishment, but for this purpose they wanted to get hold of my uncle because, as I say, the assets that he had there, they did not need anything. It was just taken away, finished, stroke of a pen, and that's it. But that which was outside of Hungary.
Were there any other people in the room apart from you and the interrogating officer?
Yes, several of his adjutants, yes. 3 of them most of the time there. And the interpreter who was also doing the typing and the...
Did the line of questioning ever vary from questions about your uncle and his whereabouts?
No, just where is your uncle? How long did you live there? And what's your relationship to your... Because Mandel was my name. And you lived in Rákóczi. With whom did you live? I said, with my uncle and aunt. And where are they now? I said, I don't know. Don't know. Another slap in the face. Another knock on the head. And when I fell to the ground, they just revived me.
What happened after the interrogation?
I was allowed to go, but I was... somehow I got back to on foot. I think first with a tram, and then on foot to Luzauca 1B. And I stayed there for a while. I had to go to work next morning. They did not get very much work out of me that day because I was really very badly hurt by that time. Stiber Erzsi and her mother washed my wounds and gave me something to drink, and then I went over to Mrs. Weinberg and had something to eat there.
During this period,
her son and daughter-in-law lived with her, and I had a girl friend, Dolly, up on the next floor up. I saw her in 1946 the last time. A very beautiful young girl, and I understand from Stiber Gyuri that she went to first to Nice, where she had an uncle and aunt, an aunt and her husband, and from there I believe she went to Canada.
what's her name?
Roder Dolly Roder. Actually, her name is in Hungarian Roder Magdolna, Magdolna, Magdolna. But she was known as Dolly.
During this period of 43, 44, when you were working, when the interrogation took place, were you maintaining your religious rituals?
Yes and no. When it came in 1944, in 1943 I did, yes. I was at my uncle's place and I went fairly regularly to synagogue. He was going to the Orthodox synagogue, which was not very far from his place. I was there last year and the year before to visit it, the synagogue I mean. And in those days, yes, and also when I went out to my uncle in 43, until the Nazis came in, I went out every Friday, and on Shabbos morning we walked to shul, of course, my uncle and myself. Friday night also, but not everyone, not in the deep winter.
What about when you were living in the Star House?
In the Star House, that was already a very different proposition. But still, when it came to the high holidays, I conducted the service for all the 300 plus people that were assembled and squeezed together in that Luzauca Bay.
When was this?
In 1944. And 1944, the Rosh Hashanah service I did. I was only a youngster then, but I did the service.
Before we go on about that, let's just step back a bit.
Yes.
Because you were saying that this interrogation took place approximately what month? When your uncle...
In July.
What happened between the July and the September of that year?
July and September I was working mostly at Ferry Hedge and other places, at Budafok and in different other parts in the environs of Budapest and Budapest itself. But in October, when the Hungarian Nazis took over, Szálasi Ferenc took over on the, if I remember correctly, on the 16th of October. Everybody knows about that. It was the putsch, the what they call the coup d'etat of Szálasi Ferenc. That's when the Germans were already there since March. They came in on the 19th of March, and this was on the 16th of October, I think. I heard on the radio Horthy Miklós saying, Germany lost this war. Németország ezt a háborút elvesztette. I remember the words exactly. We were astounded. How did he dare say this? What will come after this? So on the one hand, we were very happy that Germany lost the war, but it wasn't lost, not at that stage, not for us. At that stage, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And anyway, that day, or the next day it was, I can't remember now quite clearly, but I think it was on the 16th or 17th, that we were rounded up in the courtyard. And I remember there was an old gentleman who served in the First World War, and he was decorated personally by Franz Josef. He got a signum laudis. He got 2 signum laudis.
What's signum laudis?
The equivalent of Victoria Cross, the highest Hungarian decoration. And personally, the one of them, at least of the 2, he had 2 of them. It's very seldom that is given. This old gentleman, when the Nazi officers and the Hungarian cohorts came in and rounded us up, there was a Tigris tank trained on the building from the square, from Telekítér.
Where were you living at this point?
I was living in Luzauca B. And they came and they just, with a, what they call it, a loudspeaker, got everyone to come down to the courtyard. We were squeezed in there. This old man said to the young German officer, surely you don't expect me to come down and to do this and whatever. Halt die Schnauzen, and gave him across the face. Never he fell to the ground, and it was terrible to see. That was the first time that I've seen this young officer to do that. Halt die Schnauzen. Never, he said, 2 signum laudis I have from France. Halt die Schnauzen. And rest of us we were marched away from the place, and we were taken to a place. Apparently it was by some bribing and some collusion. We were one night in a building, all of us from that place. We were marched through the streets with hands held high. By that time, several of the shops were having already corpses there. And we had to, with hands held high, march through the streets. We were taken to a place and we were given some rest there, and we spent the night there. I slept on the floor, but no matter, I was young, and we were glad to get there. But next day, we were taken, unfortunately, by a different group, taken to the Tattersall's. That's opposite the Eastern Railway Station in Budapest. Not very far from there. We were taken there. Altogether, we were 7,000 people there. And we were made into groups, we were portioned or separated into groups. I was one of them, and we were sent home to get our equipment, which meant that we had to get from where I don't know from, we had to get shovels and pickaxes, you know. And I got one, and I came along and I had a small little ground sheet folded up, and I had it on my shoulder, and a rucksack, and we had to present ourselves. And from there, from Tattersall's, we were marched off to various directions.
What was Tattersall's?
That's the race course. The race course, yeah, the race course.
What month was this?
What month was this? Was in October.
Just stepping back a bit, you mentioned earlier that you conducted a service.
The service, yes.
Could you tell me about that?
Yes, well, the people who were in Luizout's 1B were of all different levels of religiosity, not necessarily very religious, but still they wanted to have a service. And in the courtyard itself, we could not do it any other place. No room would be big enough, and there was no central hall or something like that. So we did it in the courtyard under the first the awning of the first floor.
Was this allowed by the
Well, there was
Nazis?
no supervision at that time. There was no supervision at that time. Not of the. We could have a spot check at any time, but that was, who could tell? But anyway, I did it. I did the service.
Did you have the prayer books?
Yes.
Where did they come from?
Well, we had it in our homes, in our rooms, in our places. At that time, there was still, yes, it was taken away. Everything was taken away. Eventually, when they had to go to the from the start houses, the designated houses, to the ghetto. By that time I was not living there. I was, by that time.
How many people were in the who attended this service that you took?
All the people that were there, I do not know, about 300 odd people.
How would you describe that service under the conditions, under the circumstances?
Well, some of the old